great. How are you?
Good.
Awesome.
It's nice to see you. You look amazing.
Oh, thanks.
Your hair's straight and it looks like
Yeah.
blonde freshened up or something.
Yeah, I got my last week I got my roots touched up. So
Very nice. Very
thank
nice.
you. Thank you. I actually had it curled last night and my hair does not hold curl, so this is all that's left.
Well, it looks fantastic.
Thank you so much.
So
Thank
I want to start off by thanking you for
Of course.
technically um you're the one who suggested this format, Q&A format.
Yeah.
Uh what happened was I was watching your stories and loved everything you were saying, as per usual. And I remember having the thought, I wonder what you would have to say about dating. She's a married woman. She's been married for a really long time, but she's a master of, like all these important concepts like, authenticity, vulnerability, safe relationships. You know about these things, not just theoretically, but practically as well. And again, you've been married for a really long time,
I
but
have.
just wondered what would she have to say to us single ladies who would like to be married, um, and who want to build those safe relationships where you can show up as your authentic self and how to get there in this difficult um, dating scene um, that we're in 2024, soon to be 2025.
Yeah.
So before we start the conversation, actually, well, let me go finish my previous point. So I DM'd you and I asked you, if you would consider talking about dating as a topic, and you said that you would prefer a Q&A format.
Yes.
You know, you prefer to be prompted with certain questions, and
Yes.
that this explains how we're here today.
Yeah. It's
So,
exciting. It'd be
yeah,
fun.
very exciting. I'm very excited to pick your brain. Um,
Okay.
so maybe you can tell me or tell us a bit about your love life, as much as you feel comfortable sharing. Like, how long have you been married? Did you date a lot before getting married to your husband, David? And yeah, just as much as you feel comfortable sharing.
Okay. Thanks, Nadine. Thanks for asking. Um, yes, I've been married for 22 years. My husband and I have been together for 23 and a half years. Uh, did I date a lot before? I dated a lot in high school. I always had a boyfriend in high school. I was so boy crazy. Um, yeah, I mean, like I think one time I went through like my 4 years of high school and all the boys I dated and the length of time that we dated, and I like tallied up, and I think for 4 years of high school, I had like 4 months where I wasn't dating someone.
Oh,
Like,
wow. Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
That's quite an
Um,
exciting experience for sure.
I think it just speaks to like how much love I was needing from men, from a male, like because I didn't have my biological father in my life and my stepfather was like kind of a dick. So I think that I just had this like deep innate need for like love and affection from a man, and dating all the time was like my very wounded, immature way of going about getting that. So I don't know that I count high school dating as like, oh, I have so much dating experience. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know that I would count it as that because, like, I was still a child. I wasn't even an adult yet. But David and I met the summer after I graduated high school. We met 2 days after his 19th birthday, and I had just turned 18 2 months before. So we met at church. I love our story. I really love our story, even though we were in church and we were super Christian and we were super into like purity culture and like no sex before marriage, true love waits. Like we were totally in that space. But I think that both of us have always been like very spiritual people and we've always had a connection to the divine. Even when we were in religion, like that's how we connected to the divine. But since being out of Christianity, like I can look back on my times in Christianity and I can be like, okay, even though I was in a church and even though we were singing songs about like the blood of Jesus, like I still had very real felt experiences with the divine. And like I can trust that even if I'm not in the container of the church.
Hmm.
So, yeah, so we are still very spiritual people who love to experience and feel and connect with the divine. We're just not in church anymore. But when we met, the night we met, um, it was end of summer and I was an intern for the youth group that I had grown up in. I graduated and my youth pastor hired me that summer as the intern. And I was responsible for planning like the last big event of the summer for the youth group. And it was this like weekend long thing. They weren't spending the night, but they were coming like every day for 3 days to do these events. And the first night, we were going to have an ice cream party and we were going to have like a worship band and everybody was just going to get together. And I think after the ice cream party, we were playing. Do you remember the show Fear Factor?
Yes.
Okay, we like in the youth group we played Fear Factor. So it was
Okay.
like we had to like eat gross things and like touch
Yeah.
gross things and stuff like that. Okay. So that's what we were doing that night. So but beforehand my youth pastor was like, "I want you to take care of everything for this evening except I already have a band. I already have a band." And I was like, "Okay, cool." So I'm like busily, it's the day of, and I'm busily setting up tables and ice cream and toppings and like making sure everything's in order. I didn't even notice when the band like walked in and got there. And according to my husband, the band got there. They like came through the doors or whatever. And my youth pastor is like telling them where to set up and what to do. And David sees me from across the room. This is like very like a movie. He sees me from across the room and he looks at my youth pastor and he goes, "Dude, who is that?" And my youth pastor goes, "That's my intern." And David was like, "That's your intern?" And the youth pastor was like, "Yeah, dude, that's my intern." And David goes, "I'm going to marry her." And my youth pastor was like, "Okay, she's single right now." And I was. I didn't have a boyfriend at that time. So, yeah, they also had a girl in their band who wasn't able to make it that night. And so David told the youth pastor, "We're missing our female singer." And the youth pastor was like, "Well, Lindsey sings. You should ask her." So they did. So the first night we were together, we actually like led worship together at church.
That's really sweet.
Yeah. And then that ended up being something that we did for 12 years. We led worship together and it was like the best. So, anyway, that night after the thing is over, all the kids are leaving the church and whatever. And I'm kind of in the front of the church and David's leaving. And I didn't even know what happened, but he leaned in like to give me a kiss. And it was
On the
at
lips?
church. Yes. And I turned my head. So his kiss landed on my cheek instead of my mouth. Cause I'm like, we're at church, right? Like you can't do this in front of all these people. Also, I just met you.
Yeah.
His kiss landed on my cheek instead of my mouth, but I already was crushing hard. Like
Oh.
I was like, this guy is hot. He plays the guitar. He sings. Like he ticked all the boxes at first glance. And so anyway, his kiss landed on my cheek. And then we kind of laughed and looked at each other and I went, "Well, I better have one for the other side." And he kissed the other cheek.
Oh.
And yeah, so then we ended up doing the rest of the event. And then 2 weeks later, David randomly just showed up at the church one day and came into my office and sat down and I could tell he had something on his mind and I was like, "What's going on?" And he was just like, "I have something really big to tell you." And I was like, "Okay." And he was like, "I'm going to marry you." I was like, "You're going to what?" Like I'm
Straightforward.
literally starting my first semester of college. I'm literally moving into the dorm like next week. Like this is not on my radar right now. right? Like, I'm not thinking about getting married right now. And he was just like, okay, I mean, if you need some time to think about it, or so we did what we do in Christianity, which is like, I'm going to take some time to pray about this, So, anyway, long story short, I felt like he was right. I felt like God gave me
Peace.
I had an intuitive download. I would call it that now, but at that time it was like God spoke to my heart. But now I would say I had an intuitive download that was like, yep, this is my person. And like we just went from there. And so we dated for 8 months. We were engaged for 8 months. We would have gotten married right away. But the crazy thing is that in evangelical Christianity in the South at that time, I'm not sure what it's like now, but at that time there was this culture of like you needing to have the blessing of both parents to get married. And David's parents took 8 months to decide that I was the one that God wanted for their son.
Okay.
Or we would have married way before. Like we would have eloped way before. But it took David's parents 8 months to be like, yeah, okay, Lindsey's the one. So that's what he was waiting for that whole time. And then he popped the question, and then we were engaged for 8 months, and then we got married. So now we're having this whole conversation. That's my love life. We're having this whole conversation because you want to know what I think about dating now. And like, I don't envy people who are dating now at all.
Didn't.
Like, I cannot even imagine what that experience is like, especially because I mean, I only ever met guys in person. Like we met at church, or we met at school, or we met at, you know, church camp, or like we met somewhere and we met in person and we like spent time together in physical space with physical bodies. And like now to be scrolling and all you have to go off of are like pictures and a bio on a dating app. I'm just like, how do people meet each other in person nowadays? If you don't go to church, how do you meet people? How do you meet people, Nadine? How?
Through friends, through family, events that you attend online. I've tried online dating. I've had some success, but to me, the whole thing feels awkward. Like I never really grew to enjoy or fully embrace online dating. Like I kind of
Yeah.
reluctantly, so I've been off the apps for quite a while now. But yeah, it's just you there isn't much you can do. And even beyond meeting people, it's meeting people who share the same values as you, who are looking for the same things. So, the pool is very, very, very small.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so you guys got married after a year and a half.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Um,
November 1st, 2002.
yeah. So you just celebrated your 22nd anniversary.
Mm-hmm.
Thing. Amazing. Okay.
Yeah.
But it hasn't been all rainbows and lights.
No, no.
And you speak about this openly, but you both don't identify as Christians anymore,
No,
correct?
no,
Yeah.
we don't.
Would you say that, for all the criticisms that we can level against Christianity, that it provided a safe container for you to explore your relationship with David?
I would say yes and no. So I'll start with the part that I think is safe. So the part that Christianity provided that felt really safe was what you just shared about like shared values. So it's like, you're not going to be in this church together unless you share something similar about your values, right? And David is a pastor's kid. So he grew up with his parents in full-time ministry, and like literally his entire family is all like his grandparents used to own a Christian bookstore. His dad was a full-time pastor. Both of his uncles were full-time pastors. He had an uncle who lived on the mission field in Chile for like over a decade with his family. Uh, my husband's two brothers have been in ministry. His sister's husband was an Anglican priest. Like it's all in that family. His cousins are all ministers. Like it's the family culture is very Christian.
Mhm.
That is not my family culture. Although I was raised in the church, I did not grow up with anyone in ministry. But I always dreamed of marrying someone in ministry. I always wanted to be a pastor's wife.
Wow.
Yeah, I did. Now I'm like, why? Like, so like all eyes are on you and the standard is higher. Like that's how I feel about pastors' wives now. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
I would never voluntarily put myself in that position again. But the safe part of meeting in church was like we both had similar values around our beliefs. We both shared the no sex before marriage, like be pure, be a virgin when you get married belief. We both loved music and worship. Like I had been singing on my youth group worship team for a couple of years at that point. And so we both loved that. We loved connecting with the divine through music and corporate worship. So I would say those were the safe things. It was like, and those were really important things to me at that time. Like I would have never dated someone who wasn't a Christian. Like I never did date someone who wasn't a Christian. Like I wasn't allowed to. So my stepdad was very racist also. And so I wasn't allowed to date a non-Christian. And then I also wasn't allowed to date anyone who was Black or Hispanic.
Okay.
Um, and I grew up in an area with a lot of Hispanic people.
Okay.
So I also wasn't allowed to date anyone who had an earring.
Okay.
Uh,
If you put it symbolizes like a
because at that time, I'm like, I'm sorry, but this is literally what my stepdad would say. Only fags have earrings.
okay.
So that was, yeah, I'm telling you, I grew up with a very
Okay.
racist, bigoted stepfather. Um, so what was funny though is that the first time David met my parents, David used to have a really big mole on his earlobe, like a really large mole on his earlobe. And my stepdad said the first time he met David that God spoke to his heart and said, that's not an earring, that's your future son-in-law. Because he saw the mole and saw earring. And I wasn't allowed to date anyone with an earring. But then God was like, it's not a mole. Okay, this is how like crazy, this is the crazy side of what I grew up with. Okay,
Okay.
so now let's go into like the unsafe parts of meeting my husband in church. Ironically, the safe thing about like, oh, we both share this value of no sex before marriage was also the unsafe thing because we had a lot of chemistry. We had a lot of like sexual chemistry between us and we fooled around a lot. We never had sex, but we fooled around a lot and then always felt very guilty and full of shame afterwards and would like pray and ask God to forgive us and like look at each other and be like, we can never do that again. Like, and that just happened over and over and over. And that happened with all the boys I dated in high school too.
Okay.
So, like, that felt very unsafe because I think that honestly, in our sexual relationship today, we are still cleaning up that mess.
Really?
Yes. Yes.
Why? I'm
Because
curious.
both of us still have so much shame and like discomfort tied up in it. It's really weird. It's something we both
Huh.
still deal with because like we were like horny teenagers, but we
Right?
were like horny teenagers who couldn't just be horny teenagers. We were horny teenagers and then we were like, "Oh, I'm full of shame. Oh, like, oh, we just did this bad thing. Oh God, forgive us." Like, and so then once you do that enough times, it's like, I think it makes a neural pathway in your brain where you start to be like, this is wrong. This is bad. And then you don't want to do it anymore because you have all this guilt and this shame and this badness tied up into it.
Is it so the shame is so embedded in you as
Yeah.
far as sex goes?
Yeah. So it's like, even though, duh, we both know, like, not only were we never doing anything wrong, we're definitely still not doing anything wrong now. But that is how evangelical Christianity gets its claws into you, is it creates all of these fears and things that you feel guilty about as a way of controlling you. And we were like successfully controlled by that religion. Our sexuality was controlled by that religion. And yeah, I would say that our Christian deconstruction process is like 95% done. Like we're done. We don't feel like the church still has its claws in us in that way. And it doesn't show up in our relationship that much anymore.
Yeah,
But this 5% is something that we still work on.
I understand. I've deconstructed as well, and I mean, 95%, that's great. I'm definitely not there, but I know what it's like to have those fears and that shame linger far too long. Yeah,
Yeah,
I get that.
they do. So I would say that was an unsafe part, is just all the conditioning around sex and sexuality. Um, I also think an unsafe part was just like zooming out from the sex thing, just the dogma and the conditioning in general, and just the legalism and the like, no room for fun unless it's wholesome fun. And like, we've kind of had to, we spent all of our 20s in the church. So we didn't get our 20s to like explore who
Explore.
we were. I mean, we also had kids very early. So like our 20s were spent in ministry and raising small children.
Yeah,
Then we got into our 30s, started deconstructing Christianity, ended up moving away from Texas, where we both grew up. We live in Minnesota now, 1,200 miles away from our families. Uh, praise be for that. But yeah, we ended up moving 1,200 miles away. And that was in our, like, I don't know, we were like 32, 33, I think, when that happened. Um, and that's when we really started to like create an identity for ourselves as a couple, as a family, as individuals, away from our families, away from the Texas panhandle, away from the Bible Belt, away from the church. Um, yeah, it was like a process of like, wow, we're really like starting from scratch here and have to figure out who we are without all of this. And I would say the other thing too is what was really hard on our marriage about leaving Christianity was we only knew how to be married in the context of a Christian marriage, which is like the man is the head of the household and the woman is this like Proverbs 31 submissive keeper of the home. And like that was our filter for marriage. So then whenever you take all those things away, then it's like, well, shit, how do we be married like normal people? Like, because I would say that like in Christianity, all the mental labor that a woman does is like totally expected.
right.
And then we got outside of Christianity and I was like, bitch, I am not this like Proverbs 31 woman anymore. Like, this is not who I am. Like, you are just as capable of putting a load of laundry in as I am. Like, and really, we actually had to have that conversation where I was like, look, this has been a thing for us always because I was under the oppression of evangelical Christianity as a woman. And so I've been carrying all of this mental and emotional labor that you haven't even known about. Now we're out of that. I'm ready to offload some of this labor. And like, dude, you can take meat out of the freezer too, you know? like,
Yeah.
so yeah, I think when you start out in Christianity and that's what you're in for more than half of your relationship, it's really hard to learn how to be married and be a couple outside of that because that's what you're used to. And now we're like, well, we're changing. And I'm like, I'm not putting up with this anymore. So
Yeah.
that required him to make a choice. Are you going to change or are we going to be done? And it has been really hard. Um,
You know, I think it's so special because I've been following you for quite some time that you guys have been able to face that question, like, are we gonna, get through this together or are we done? It seems to me like you guys have had to face that question many times.
we have.
And every time you decide to come together and get
Yeah.
over the problem. And I think it's so amazing because, not just to go from, uh, evangelical Christians to I don't want to say secular people, but like more,
Yeah.
spiritual people, and then like all the changes that come with that alone. And to me, I'm having a hard time getting my thought across, but
That's
I
okay.
just think it says so much about the love that you have for one another. It
Yeah.
really does. Like
Yeah.
you're both very committed to one another. And maybe it's not, I don't know if it's that obvious to you guys because you're in the middle of your marriage, but as a person, like from the outside looking in, like I see that that's what two people who are committed to each other look like.
Yeah. We are insanely fucking committed to each other. Like
That's amazing.
we are. And yeah, it's it like I don't know if you can tell this from the outside from the internet, but like I'm a lot. Like I'm a lot. I'm a lot.
You
Like
say that often, but you also offer a lot.
I do offer a lot, but
You bring a
if
lot to
you
the.
are I do bring a lot to the table, but if you are in an intimate relationship with me, and I don't just mean sexually intimate, like my relationship with my husband. I mean, like if you're part of my inner circle, which David, of course, is in that, like I I am a lot and I can be too much for a lot of people. And so it's been really important for me to find those people who are like, no, you're not too much. Be more, because my whole life I've been like told you're too much, sit down and shut up. Um, and I think because I am a lot, I am like the sandpaper that rubs up against David's rough edges, you know? And he's the sandpaper that rubs up against my rough edges. But I have to totally acknowledge that I don't think there are many men who could be married to me the way that he is because I expect a lot. And I don't mean a lot like I need you to bring me flowers and buy me
I know
expensive
exactly
things
what
all
you
the time. Like, I mean, like,
bring to the relationship.
what
As
I bring to the relationship is a lot, and I want to be matched in that. Like,
I'm
I bring an emotional vulnerability and an emotional intelligence that I expect to be able to go toe to toe with my partner with that. And
Mhm.
like, I bring a passion that I expect to be matched in that. And like David and I are actually, we're not in a conflict right now, but we're kind of going to another layer of the spiral right now where like I have not stopped growing as a person since I like woke up 6 years ago. Like I have not stopped growing as a person. I have not become complacent in my spiritual journey. I have daily practices that I do. My spirituality is extremely important to me. My connection with the divine is important to me because that's literally how I get all of my creativity. Like it's all divinely inspired. And it's up to me to nurture and maintain that connection.
Mhm.
And in the last couple of years, David has not prioritized his spiritual practice and he's kind of like let it fall off on the wayside and he's gotten a little more addicted to his phone and I've said something and I've said something and I've said something. And it's not that if he's not spiritual and I am spiritual, that doesn't mean that we can't be together. Like I think people can have different beliefs and still be in a successful relationship. But again, I have really big work to do in this world. Like I feel like I'm just getting started. Like the vision that I have for myself and my work is like so much bigger than what's happening right now and I can feel it happening. And so because that's my calling in this world, I need to be spiritually equally matched. Like I need to be. It's not, oh, you're not good enough for me. Like try harder. It's not that. It's like if you're going to be with me, this is what it's going to take. And the thing about David, because he's so amazing, is he will totally be like, you're right. I have gotten lazy. I've been thinking about it. I think about it all the time and I just don't do it. And I can tell that that affects you. But like, because he also people pleases sometimes. That used to be a big pattern for him, was people pleasing. And so we've really had to work on him using his voice and having his voice and knowing that I'm not in charge of everything. And so I always check him on, like, are you saying that because that's what you think I want you to say, or is that real? And it always comes back to him being like, no, like everything that you're asking of me benefits me.
Hmm.
Like, you're not asking for something selfish. You're asking for something that is important to me, and it also benefits me, and it benefits you, and it benefits us if I do this. And that's the nature of our relationship, is we kind of look at it as like we are these two things that like we support each other and we prop each other up when we have to, and we come through for each other. And it's a next caliber in a relationship that I don't think is like that common. Do you know what I mean? Or if it
I do.
is, I haven't met that many people who do that. So to take it back to your original question about dating, how the fuck do you find something like that?
Yeah.
And I think my answer is you have to be able to spend time in physical space with this physical person to even get like an energetic vibe of like, do I even like being in your energy? Like, do I even like being in this space with you? You know?
In this space, meaning like physical space, like any
Yeah,
space.
like if we're at, like, let's say you and your online date decide like, okay, we're going to meet up for coffee or whatever. You get there, and what I would do now if I was dating now, I would absolutely, if I had to meet someone online because there was nowhere else, and trust me, if I was to start dating now, like if David was to die, God forbid, and 3 years from now I'm like, okay, I'm ready to get back out there and maybe think about being in a relationship again, this is what I would do. If I had to meet somebody online, okay, I have to meet you online,
Hmm.
but I would make sure that we get in a physical space together as soon as possible, whether that's a restaurant, a coffee shop, a whatever, that we're in a physical space, because I need to be in that. I need to be able to observe you. I need to observe how you talk to the barista. I need to observe how you talk to the server. I need to see if you, like, I'm really big into this. Do you open a door for me? Like, do you motion to me to order first? Like, I'm really big into chivalry. Okay. So, like, I don't know any of those things if I'm not in a physical space with you. Now, for some women, that kind of shit's not important to them, and that's fine. You want to open your own door. You don't want someone to motion to you. Okay, great, that's fine. But you still can't get a vibe check, and you still can't observe this person and their vibe through your phone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like I want to be in the same physical space as you, and I want to feel how do I feel in response to you, and how do other people feel in response to you?
Yeah.
Like, do you make other people comfortable? Are you considerate of other people? Are you respectful? Are you kind? Like, I'm going to find out real quick. Now, some men will put on their best face, right? The first few times you're together and you don't get their authentic self. But again, the more time you spend with someone in physical space, the more you're going to catch it when they slip up. Whereas it's really easy to bullshit someone through texts,
Right.
right? It's easy to bullshit somebody. So I'm like, let's get into an area where you can't bullshit me.
Yeah.
And I think for women, I mean, for men and women today, but I'm assuming that I'm speaking to women who are dating. That's kind of who I'm talking to, but men can use this too. I think that something that online dating has perhaps made more difficult. I don't want to say it's taken it away because I don't think we're victims of online dating, but I think that something that online dating has made it more difficult is us being in our bodies and using our discernment. You
Say
know,
that again.
I think something online dating has made more difficult is being in our bodies and using our discernment
It's more difficult to be in our bodies and use our discernment.
when we're looking at someone
Like,
on a screen.
can you unpack that?
Yeah. So like what is there to discern about someone's photos or their bio? They're only showing you the best.
Yeah, I mean, you can extrapolate, but you're extrapolating. You don't know for sure.
Right. And depending on where you're at and depending on how attractive you find this person, you might be like bypassing a little bit of your discernment that's like,
Yeah,
hey, listen to this because you're like, oh, but he's so hot. Oh, but he's so like whatever, right? And so when you're in a physical space with a person, then you're not just looking at this idealized online version of them that's like their best pictures, their best accomplishments, their best achievements, their whatever. Like you're actually seeing them and how they interact with people.
yeah,
And
their essence.
yeah,
The-
their essence. Exactly. You want to see their authentic self.
Yeah,
You can't see that in a picture in a bio. You're not getting their authentic self. You're getting the best of them that they want you to see. It's like their billboard, right?
yes,
It's like you're
yes,
driving down the highway and their profile is their billboard. And it's like, like by looking at this billboard, do I want to call the number on the billboard? You know what I mean? Like, does that look good enough that I want to call the number? And if he's done a good job of curating his profile, then yeah, you probably do. But that tells you nothing. You don't know anything. You know that he's got some nice pictures and maybe a dog and he says good things on his profile about himself.
yeah. How do you think you would build your online dating
How would
profile?
I build my
If
online profile?
you think that you would be, you value authenticity so much, do you think that you would actually I don't even think I need to ask you that. Of course you would build a very authentic profile. I guess my question is, how authentic would you be? Like, would you just state exactly what you're looking for right off the bat? Like, how much of yourself would you put forward?
Honestly, I think if I was to make a dating profile, I would probably stick my Instagram handle in my bio, my profile, and
Yeah.
that
Mhm.
would be it. And I would just be like, here's where you can go. This is the most authentic representation of me on the interwebs. Is it a representation of everything about me? Absolutely not. But you're going to see that I'm into witchcraft. You're going to see that I'm very spiritual. You're going to see that I'm a fucking good communicator. You're going to see that I am very direct and assertive. You're going to see that I'm into pole and sensual movement. You're going to see like that I'm into plant medicine and foraging and making my own plant medicines. You're going to see a very vast array of like all the different things that make up me as a person that I've
Yeah.
chosen to share publicly.
Yeah.
I can imagine that if I was dating and a man who I'd never met went to that profile and kind of scrolled through it and watched some videos and heard me talk, like I would hope that if he had discernment, he would be able to be like, mm, I don't think I can handle this. Or no, I can fucking handle her. Like I like because again, I'm a lot. And when I say I'm a lot, I don't mean in a negative, like I'm too much, I'm high maintenance. I'm like, I don't mean it in a self deprecating way. I mean, like, I am a powerful fucking woman. I know that I'm powerful and I don't dim that power for anybody. So if my power intimidates you, or if you think I'm going to like hold back on it because you're a fragile man, like, then we're not going to be well matched. We're not equally matched, you know?
Yeah.
So I think I think that my Instagram, it filters out a lot of people who follow me.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like I'll
Yeah.
just post one thing and I'm thinking, oh, this is a cool thing to post, whatever. And pretty soon I've lost 1,000 followers in 5 hours. You know what I mean? And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, that filtered some people out. You know what I mean? I feel
Yes.
like if somebody was looking at me from a romantic point of view, I think it would have the same effect. Like if a man was like, "Oh, I might be interested in her. Let me check out her Instagram." And he sees me like pole dancing and moving sensually, and if the first thing that comes up for him is, "Oh, I don't want to be with somebody who posts public stuff like that. I want her to keep it for me." Filtered him out.
Do you think that that sort of reaction would trigger an abandonment wound in you, or the fear that like you're too much, that kind of response? Or let's say you had to face that sort of response multiple times. Do you think at some point you would just feel like, oh, come on, like, it's how do I still show up how do I still take pride in who I am and refuse to compromise and dim my light? But yeah, I still also really want to find someone.
I think a few years ago, yes, I would have felt that way. I would have felt like, oh, come on. Like, come on, there's got to be somebody. Like, please see me. Like, I think a few years ago, I would have been like that. But now I honestly don't think that I would be because I actually get rejected all the time. Like, I've got people coming into my space all the time and they have a problem with something. So,
That's so insightful what you just said. It's true because you don't have to wait to be rejected by a potential romantic partner to feel
no,
rejection. Like you can probably, all of us can probably detect rejection in our everyday life from, you know, in non-romantic situation.
yeah,
That's very true.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. So I get rejected all the time. I get rejected online all the time. Like, people express their disappointment in my content all the time. People come into my DMs and they think they need to tell me how bad I am or how bad my take is or whatever all the time. Okay. It happens all the time. So at this point, it just doesn't bother me anymore. Like,
Also have tens of thousands of people who validate you and who,
I do, but Nadine, I don't I don't have attachment relationships with my followers on the internet. So, yeah, it's great when people are like, "Oh, you're so authentic. You're my favorite account online." Like, that's so great. Like, I love that. I'm so glad that my content is valuable. I'm glad people feel seen. I'm glad it resonates. I'm glad it's helpful. I really, really am. But all of that could go away tomorrow and I would be fine because I have people in my real life who see me offline and see more of me than my followers see. And they're still like, no, we're here. Like, we got you. You know, those are where my attachment relationships are. I don't have attachment relationships with the internet. So when I lose 1,000 followers in 5 hours, I'm not like, oh my God, oh my God, oh, what's happening? Oh, is my business going to go in the toilet? Like, I'm like, oh, bye, 5,000 followers. Like, bye. That makes room for 1,000 more people who absolutely fucking love me to come in here, you
and
know?
that's true. Like I can testify that this is true because I've never seen you pedal back on something you said to appease your critics. Uh
Nope.
I feel like you constantly show up as Lindsey, as yeah, it's
It
true.
is very, very important to me to not have my what I do on Instagram be like a character that I play. Like, I'm not putting on a show for people and showing up as this character who does these things and teaches these things online. Like, everything you're seeing me post about online or every video you see online is already something that I have lived and mastered in my real life before it ever makes it to that grid. And I do that with actual physical flesh and blood humans who are in the same physical space as me
Mhm.
before it makes it to the grid. And so I think that's one of the things that, like, I don't even know how to put words on it, but I think that's what other people feel that either attracts them so strongly or repels them so strongly.
I agree. Yeah, because
So, like, what wouldn't that's why I think in my dating profile, if I had one, I'd just be like, just go to my Instagram and like see that. Because if that's too much for you, there's no way you could date me. There's no way. And I think that's actually a really ethical thing to do because then I'm not putting on this front, that like, oh, I can be this character for you, but because nobody can maintain the character forever.
right.
Like, that's why new relationship energy leaves. That's why butterflies go away. Like, that's attraction and infatuation. That's not actually love. And a lot of people confuse attraction and infatuation and obsession for love. And so then, whenever those butterflies and that new relationship energy dies down, which it always will, they're like, oh, we just fell out of love. I just fell out of love with him. I just don't love it. Like, we're just not in love anymore. And it's like, no, dude, there's just, you don't have the buffer of the new relationship energy hitting your dopamine anymore. And like, now you have to actually do the real work of being in a relationship. And a lot of people don't want to do the real work of being in a relationship because they don't think it's supposed to be like that.
Mm.
They think that if I found the one, then we're just always going to be in love and we're always going to be like together and we're always going to be infatuated with each other and have this honeymoon energy. And it's like, no, bitch, like I haven't felt honeymoon energy, butterflies in my stomach for David in decades, because that's not what makes love.
Yeah. How do you give yourself over to those initial fun feelings while simultaneously having that voice in your head being like, well, this is not going to last forever. Like maybe you shouldn't enjoy this too much because if you do, when, reality hits, you're not, like, do you get what I'm trying to say? Like,
Yeah, I think that's because like I absolutely think people should enjoy new relationship energy while it's there. Like, I mean, David and we've been together 23 years. So, like, we've fucked around with non monogamy here and there. Like, we've dabbled in that and played in that. And so, I've actually had the experience of being married to my husband, dating another man, and experiencing new relationship energy. Like, so I'm in my like decades long marriage over here with someone else who I've not been with for decades, having this infatuation, obsession, new relationship energy. I fucking enjoy it while it lasts. Like, I'm going to enjoy it, but I'm always grounded in the reality that like I know this doesn't last. So I'll enjoy it while it's here, but I'm not going to be afraid of when it ends. But if the new relationship energy goes away and the relationship is just like annoying and hard and like I feel like I'm having to pull teeth to get any kind of emotional intelligence out of him, or I feel like I'm trying to grow as a person and I'm like dragging him along behind me, like, can you please come grow with me? Like, if that's what new relationship energy devolves into, then yeah, that's not going to work for me,
mhm, mhm.
you know?
When you and David first got married, I'm sure that the concepts that matter most to you today were not at the forefront of your mind. Maybe correct me if I'm wrong.
It
Maybe I
would depend
feel
what you're talking about.
like authenticity, emotional intelligence,
Not
bound.
even words in our vocabulary. Not even nervous system, not even a
Yeah,
word in our vocabulary when we
right.
first got together.
Here you are today, and your marriage still works. So my question is, sometimes you enter a relationship as one person,
Mm-hmm.
and as you evolve, um, the things that matter most to you change. What is my question?
It's okay. Find it.
How how do you know the difference between starting a relationship with someone who doesn't value the same things that you do, but might get there eventually, and someone who d oh, sorry, they don't value those things because they've never been exposed to them. Nobody's ever shown them.
Mm-hmm.
And someone who just doesn't care and will never get there.
Yeah.
So for example, I'm dating someone, and when I bring up boundaries, they're like, "What are you talking about? Boundaries?" And this person might be confused and not really interested in what I'm saying or not on the same page as me, not because they don't have the potential to get there. They just it's just a new word to them. It's a new concept, as opposed to someone who has no intentions of ever developing
Yeah.
that side of themselves.
Yeah. Okay. So here's something that David and I have gotten into the practice of asking each other. So let's say I'll use him getting complacent about his spiritual practice as an example. So if I come to David and I'm like, hey, I've noticed that, like, because of this, this, and this, like, your spiritual connection just isn't there. Here's how it's affecting me. Because actually, when he's not connected, it does affect me. He's a less present partner when he's not in his spiritual practice, because his spiritual practice is practicing presence. So if I'm like, hey, you're not in your spiritual practice and here how it's affecting me, then we always make sure to ask each other, like, okay, I've asked for this thing from you before. You've said that you're willing to do it, that you're capable of doing it. It still isn't happening. One, is there something I'm doing that's preventing you from doing this? Like, is there something that I could do to make this easier for you? Two, are you actually capable of it? Or were you just like really hopeful that you were capable of it at that time? Are you actually capable of it? And three, are you able to meet this need for me in a way that aligns with your authenticity? So, whether your dude has heard about boundaries or not, I think you can ask him, like, is this something you're capable of learning more about? And is there a desire for you to learn more about it? Are you willing? Like, if I need to teach you or get you some resources, or like, if you need to go see a therapist for a while and figure out boundaries, are you willing? Are you capable of this? And does doing this align with your authenticity? So then if he doesn't figure out boundaries, then you don't have to be wondering the whole time and then feeling betrayed afterwards. Well, you said you could do it and you didn't. You dropped me. You said you were willing and you never took a step. You said you were capable, but you never did the thing. So either you didn't tell me the truth, because maybe at that time you truly thought, yeah, I can be capable of this, right? Maybe at that time you truly did think that. But now it's been however long and it's still not happening. So do you still feel that way? Do you still feel like you're capable? Because if not, that's okay. It's not fair of me to ask you to do something that is outside your capability to do. So if you're not capable, I really need to know.
And then once you know what happens, you have to make the decision
Well,
as,
David hasn't ever told me he's not capable of something yet.
okay,
That hasn't
let's
happened yet.
let's say you're dating someone and
If I'm dating someone and we've talked about boundaries and he's like, well, I don't know anything about boundaries, this is a whole new concept for me, then I honestly, like, you do not have to do what I'm saying. Okay. Like, you have your own relationship and you are allowed to do whatever you want. But if I'm dating someone and they don't understand boundaries and I'm at where I'm at right now, I'm going to be like, okay, I've caught this fish on my fishing pole. He's too small. I need to throw him back and he needs to grow a bit.
because the gap is too large between where you're at and where he's at.
We're not equally matched.
Correct.
And I don't like doing this because it makes it seem like
No,
one
no, but I
person
get what
is
you're,
over. That's not what I mean. We're
I
just
know, yeah.
it's incongruent. You know what I mean? And there's a whole lot more about boundaries to learn than just what you read in a book about boundaries. Like, there's all these stories to unpack about boundaries, and there's the actual, like, learning how to set a boundary and then learning how to hold that boundary and learning how to communicate that boundary, and like knowing when you need to be rigid with that boundary and when not to be rigid with that boundary, and like knowing if that boundary needs to change because you've changed as a person. Like, there's a whole lot more that goes into boundaries other than just like, here, read this book called Codependent No More and learn about boundaries. You know what I mean? So if it's me and I'm dating and somebody is like, I don't know anything about boundaries, and I'm going to be like, we are not well matched because I can't trust you to have me or have yourself if you don't know about boundaries.
What if they know about boundaries without knowing about the concept of boundaries? Like they respect your boundaries, but they don't know that that's what they're doing.
So they
You-
just need some language.
Yeah.
Then maybe you say, maybe you just need some language for this. Here's how I would describe it.
Mm.
What do you think? You know?
Mhm. What
But,
is a boundary?
huh?
What is a boundary? You know
It
what?
tells it tells you how to treat me.
Mm.
It tells you what I will and won't put up with because I want to be in a relationship with you. Not because I'm trying to cut you out, but I actually want you. Because I want you, I'm saying, here's what I will and won't put up with. If that is authentic for you and you can handle that, great. That's a boundary.
I love that definition. I really like that definition.
Well, thanks.
It's an invitation, because we don't really we think of boundaries. I think it has a connotation of disconnection, but
Yeah.
what it
No.
is sort of an invitation to connect within certain parameters.
Yes.
This is where I'm able to connect with you, and
Yeah.
you can.
And this is how I'm able to connect with
Yeah.
you. And I am not able to connect with you if you're coming at me and you're like really big and angry and yelling at me, you
And
know?
yeah.
So it's, yeah, I want to be close to you. So here's how to treat me, and here's what I will and will not put up with. And like, I don't, some things I'm rigid about, and some things I can be like a little looser with and not be so rigid about, you know? Depends on the person, depends on how long I've known them.
Okay. So I wanted to do this exercise with you at the beginning. I wanted
Oh,
to
okay.
clarify the terms of our conversation. So there was boundaries, there was also authenticity. What is
Yeah. Authenticity is the essence of who you are before you had to adapt. Just before you had to put on the layers of people pleasing or silencing and censoring yourself or perfectionism or the good girl or really big anger, like whatever the adaptation is, authenticity is who you are when those things are removed.
okay?
It's the essence of who you are.
And would you say that authenticity is essential to building a healthy relationship?
100%. Yes.
What if you feel like, you want a relationship, you want a healthy relationship, but because really before you can demand authenticity of anyone, you have to embody it yourself.
Yes, ma'am.
And what if you recognize that you're not embodying your full authentic self? Should you still date? And
Yeah.
also, isn't embodying your full authentic self the work of a lifetime? If maybe not a lifetime,
Yes.
it can take a while to get there. So should you deprive yourself of the benefits of a relationship
No,
to get there?
no, 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 because we all have triggers and patterns and adaptations that never, ever, ever come up when we're just by ourselves or when
Yeah.
we're with a friend, but they only get poked in the container of a romantic relationship. Now, you can decide, nope, that's too much. I don't want to deal with that. So I don't want to be in a relationship. Like somebody can decide that, and that's fine if people decide that. But a lot of what is authentic for you is in working out those adaptations in the container of a relationship. Because, like, for example, I have the adaptation of extreme hypervigilance. Okay. So, like, uh, I don't know how much of my story you know, but my mother gave me the silent treatment a lot when I was a kid. And so the energy of that was I could sense that something was wrong, that she was withdrawn from me. And a child's nervous system kicks into fight flight, not to fight the parent or to run away from the parent, but in pursuit of the parent. So my fight flight response would kick in, and I would literally be like leaning into my mother, like, is everything okay? Are you mad at me? What did I do? What did I do wrong? What can I do to help you? Like just trying to figure it out and fix it so that we can restore that connection.
Is that fawning?
Um, it, it turns into fawning, it devolves into fawning. So at first, it's a pursuit of, it's like, I need to figure out what's wrong with you and what's going on here. And if there's something that I need to do to make this better, that's when it gets into fawning. But the initial hypervigilance and anxiety is just hypervigilance and anxiety. And what was so confusing about that is that my body knew something was wrong, but my mom, with her like blank, flat affect, I'd be like, is everything okay? She'd be like, yeah, it's fine. I'd be like, did I do something wrong? No. So it's like my body is saying, alarm bell, something's going wrong, something's going wrong. But my mother's like, no, it's fine.
And you know that not to be true. So you have to
Well,
keep
that's what creates the confusion, is because at 8 years old, I don't know that that's not true, because she's my parent and I'm supposed to trust her and I'm supposed to believe what she says. But my body is telling a completely different story. So there's this like dissonance, right? My body is saying everything's not okay. And my mother, in her very flat affect, is saying everything is okay. But I can feel that it's not okay,
Mhm.
right? So then when she wouldn't give me the answers that I needed, or like change out of her flat affect, that's when I would devolve into like, well, let me clean the whole house for you and see if that helps, right? Let me pull out this straight A report card and see if that helps. That's the people pleasing and the fawning part.
Mhm.
Um, but through that, because that happened with my mother so often, I developed the skill of hypervigilance, because if I could be so in tune with my mother's mood, behavior, body language, affect, facial expression, tone of voice, if I could be so in tune with that, maybe I can predict before she withdraws from me, and I can do whatever I need to do to make sure that doesn't happen. It's a huge abandonment thing. So now, fast forward decades, and I'm in a relationship with an intimate person, whether that's like a best friend or my husband. If they seem more withdrawn than usual, I go right back in. What's wrong? Is everything okay? Did I do something wrong? Are you mad at me? Like I do it all over again. And when I don't get what I want out of that, then I'll like pick a fight or I'll get passive aggressive or something like that. Now, I don't do that anymore, but that was my pattern then. So I've learned, when I feel this hypervigilance, I've learned to notice, oh, okay, there's the hypervigilance. I am extremely aware of everything they're doing, saying, what their tone is, what they're not saying. I'm extremely aware of all of that. And instead of picking a fight or going into this very childish, like, what's wrong? Are you mad at me? Like, instead of doing that, I'm going to ground myself in the present moment, and I'm going to use my awareness to notice that this is what I'm feeling. And I'm going to ask a question. And so then what I will say is, hey, I noticed that you're more withdrawn than usual. And the voice in my head is telling me that you're mad at me and I've done something wrong. Is that real? And now I've just bypassed the whole trauma response that I used to go down by anchoring myself in the present and asking a question. And never once has David or anyone else said, yeah, I am actually mad at you. And I'm withdrawn because I'm mad at you. And I need you to figure out what you did on your own. Never once has that ever happened. David's usually like, no, I just didn't sleep good the night before. Like I'm tired because I'm quiet because I'm tired.
Yeah.
Um, Sorry, you're gonna have to remind me the question. Why was I talking about hypervigilance? I know it was related to your question.
Yeah.
Oh, it was about authenticity. It was about authenticity,
Yes. Uh,
right? Okay.
define authenticity before, and you were saying it's who you are
Yeah.
before.
So we defined authenticity, but then there was something after that that felt relevant to me.
Oh, was it how you can show up? How can you enter relationships if you're not at your most authentic self?
Yes, yes, that's it. Okay. So is that hypervigilance authentically who I am? No, no, it is not. But that hypervigilance does not come up
All
when
the
I
time.
am by myself.
Yes, correct.
Like
Yeah,
I'm not like, oh, am I mad at myself? Like I'm not wondering about other people. Like it only happens in intimate relationships.
yes.
So that's not my authentic self. The hypervigilance is an adaptation. It's a thing I had to put on over my authentic self. So now the gift is I'm in this other relationship with this man or this best friend who is not my mother, who does not give me the silent treatment, who does not purposefully withdraw from me to hurt me, but I'm still extra fucking sensitive to their energy, their facial expressions, their tone, their affect. Like I'm so sensitive to it still. I don't want that sensitivity to go away. In my intimate relationships, it's kryptonite. It's an atomic bomb. But in my coaching practice, that hypervigilance is my fucking superpower because I notice I will notice if your breathing changes. I will notice if your shoulders come up a little bit. Like I notice. So I need that noticing, but it's authentic in a coaching practice because we don't have an attachment relationship. I don't have an attachment relationship with my clients. So the little things I'm noticing about them don't register as a threat to me.
Right.
But in my most intimate relationships, that same superpower turns into an A bomb because now I will like sabotage my relationship and act out of my integrity because I'm noticing these things and making a meaning out of them that may not necessarily be there based on the context of my previous experience with my mother, which
Right.
makes
Yeah.
total sense, but it's not appropriate anymore. So, what does this have to do with authenticity and like showing up in the dating relationship? Yes, you need to be able to be the whatever level of authentic you are at. And to answer your second question, yes, authenticity is an ongoing, lifelong. I fully expect that there are things about me that are authentic that I have not even tapped into yet, that this time next year I will have tapped into. Like, I fully expect that that's the case because that's what's been happening for years. So, I want to be able to show up as that person, that authentic person in a dating relationship. And if the person I'm dating pokes at something, triggers something, like whatever, I want the opportunity to be able to communicate about it and figure it out and work it out so that I can discern, is this about me being authentic or is this about to turn into a relationship pattern that's going to keep us like going in circles on a hamster wheel for however long we decide to be together.
Hmm.
So I don't think that you're like, I'm going to go find my authentic self and be my authentic self and then I'll date. No, because there are things about your authenticity that you cannot find and embody until you have those things mirrored by you in another relationship,
I totally.
mirrored to you.
So essentially, what you're saying is that those adaptations don't disqualify you from entering into a relationship,
No.
an opportunity for them to come to life and to heal, provided you're with the right partner too.
Well, what does the right partner mean?
Well, somebody who makes space for that side of you.
Somebody who can hold you in that.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Right. So then again, that comes back to what I keep saying about being more equally matched. Right. Because, like, if I'm where I am in my journey and I'm dating someone new and my hypervigilance kicks in, if I can't go to them and be like, hey, I'm noticing I'm hypervigilant. The voice in my head is telling this story. Is that what's really happening? And they're like, what do you mean that's what the voice in your head is telling you? I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't do anything wrong. I was just making coffee and you came in here and you just started saying all these things to me and I don't even know what's happening. Like, uh uh,
Yeah,
like an aware person who I would be more equally matched with would be like, oh, you're feeling hypervigilant. Let's talk about it.
yeah,
You know what I'm saying? A
absolutely.
lot of people would say that's a really high expectation. Yes, bitch, it is. You should have high expectations.
Totally agree.
You
I,
should have high expectations.
I totally agree. I think, fortunately for you, your husband doesn't, you trust that if you ask your husband whether he's upset with you, he will tell you the truth.
Yes.
Yes, no. And if he says no, then you can rest in that. Your
Yes.
worry has been put to bed.
Yes.
Sometimes, though, your intuition about someone tells you that they're not being truthful.
Yeah.
And that if you dig deeper, you'll you'll be justified in your initial worry. Do you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. Yeah.
So then, so then what?
What if they're not initially telling you the truth?
Yeah.
I mean,
Like, can you?
I think there has to be room for everybody to have their like process of awareness. So I think it's totally possible that like you could have an intuitive feeling that like something doesn't feel right here. It doesn't feel like he's like quite understanding what I'm saying, or it doesn't feel like he's quite connecting with himself and his truth about this, or like whatever. Um, so then just like honor yourself in that. Don't gaslight yourself out of your intuition, right? And
Yeah.
don't let him be like, I fucking told you nothing was wrong, right? Like, but also we have to trust people at their word. So where's the line between
Yeah.
like, okay, but my heart and my body is telling me one thing and you're telling me something else and the two don't match. And I don't want to gaslight myself, but I don't want to gaslight you, right? Like I think if we just make these things conscious and say them out loud, we're all thinking them anyway. And this is one of the things that I teach my couples when I work with couples in communication is like there's so much that you're not saying. There's so much that you're not expressing to your partner. And if you have an intuitive feeling about something and it's a yes and they're telling you no, it's a no for me, like then let's talk about this energetic mismatch we're experiencing. I wonder why I'm feeling that yes, there is something and you're feeling that no, there isn't. Can we talk about that? So then there's no need to argue. Well, I think there is something going on. Well, I don't think there is. I told you there was nothing. Well, I told you there was. Like, there's no reason to argue about it, right? That's just going to go in circles because it's just your word against his. Instead, let's get out of that madness and let's just like shoot the shit for real. And let me be vulnerable and be like, okay, I am having a feeling that feels really true for me. And it's telling me this, this, and this about you. And I've come to you with this feeling, and you're telling me it's no. You're telling me that's not what's happening, but I can't shake this feeling. Can we talk about it? Can we be curious about this? Like, not to fight about it. I'm not accusing you of anything. I just, it's really important to me that I be able to trust myself, but I also really want to trust you. And I know sometimes that those two things aren't going to match. So, like, can we just figure this out? And if he's like, no, you need to figure it out on your own, that is really fucking valuable information. Right? Because if he's like, because my David would be like, oh, you're feeling like something's happening and I'm telling you it's something different. Absolutely. Let's talk about that. Maybe I'm missing something.
Yeah. That's, I mean, that just goes to show how much David values your intuition.
Oh, he
That
knows
he
it's never wrong.
that he would defer to your intuition more than his own awareness.
Well,
I don't know if I said that correctly, but
I mean, I think that that's perhaps oversimplifying it a bit. Like I always want David to know that he has agency and autonomy and sovereignty and that I value his authenticity more than I value being right.
Yes.
So as long as I'm in integrity with myself and with him, and I'm not being manipulative, and I'm not just trying to get what I want, and I'm not trying to get him to admit to something that's not true just to shut me up. If I'm in my integrity and he's in his integrity, then there's no reason why we can't talk about this, even if we land at two totally different places. Like, I'm totally open to the possibility that my intuition can be telling me one thing and that is true for me, and his authenticity is something different and that's true for him. I'm
Mhm.
totally open to that possibility. But he also doesn't try to like gaslight me or deny, that I what I'm feeling is real or not,
Yeah.
you know? Um and he does defer a lot to my intuition, and I we also have a and are working on, actively still working on, creating more of a masculine feminine polarity in our relationship. And so the feminine, I mean, I'm not saying the masculine doesn't have intuition. My husband is extremely intuitive. Like after I broke up with my last non-monogamous partner, for a few weeks after I was like, okay, we're not doing this anymore. We can still be friends, but we're not doing this anymore. He was still sending me like suggestive text messages and things like that. And I was just holding a boundary and I was being like, hey, you're not supposed to send that. This is over. Right. Well, I was handling it on my own. I'll be damned if David didn't come out of his room one morning and say, I had the weirdest dream about this guy last night. He was like, I saw him sending you suggestive text messages that he wasn't supposed to be sending you in this dream. Like he was not respecting your boundary. And it felt so real. And he was like, is it happening? And I pulled out my phone and I was like, how the fuck did you know? And I showed him. So he's also extremely intuitive, but he often defers to my intuition because I think as the feminine partner, I do have my fingers on the pulse of things a lot more than he does because I'm in it and he's the container of it.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like another example of intuition, before we moved to Minnesota and bought the house we currently have, we had been looking all over Texas for land. I grew up on a horse ranch. I wanted to raise my kids on land. I wanted to be rural. That's what I wanted. It took some convincing for him, but he finally got there. So we're looking all over Texas for some land to buy. And I bet we saw 26 properties or something, our poor realtor. Like, and we weren't finding what we needed. We weren't finding what I wanted. I wanted at least 5 acres. Like, I was very specific about what I wanted. And we looked at these 26 properties and didn't find it. And finally, we found this one property. And I was like, okay, okay. So we put an offer in on this property. It wasn't even close to what I wanted, but I was convincing myself that we could make it work because we were also in this like tiny apartment at that time looking for a house, and we were like outgrowing the apartment with our 2 kids. So I was like, okay, fine, I'll make it work. We put the offer in, I don't know, 5 or 6 in the evening. 1 or 2 in the morning, I like woke up and sat upright in bed and like hit him and like woke him up. And he's like, what? And I was like, we can't buy that house. And he was like, why? And I was like, I don't know. We just can't buy it. I just have this feeling like we cannot buy this house. And he was like, okay. I mean, I think our realtor is going to be pissed because we just put that offer in like 5 hours ago, but okay. And anyway, he was like, I trust you. So at 2 in the morning, I texted the realtor and was like, I'm so sorry. I have no explanation for this, but like, I just have this overwhelming feeling that we cannot buy this house. Can you please rescind our offer? And of course, she was annoyed and was like, okay, I will. Dude, 6 weeks later, we were moving here and buying this place. And this place was exactly to the letter everything that I wanted. So my intuition saved us from, saved me from not getting exactly what I wanted. And he trusted it.
Yeah.
He trusted it. And I have so many more examples of times that I can give where my intuition, I'm just like, no, this is how it is. And he's like, okay, I'm trusting you. And sure enough, like there it is. So he does defer to my intuition on a lot, but he doesn't defer to my intuition at the expense of his own or at the expense of his authenticity.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Got it. Speaking of intuition, um, trauma can disconnect us from
Oh,
our
absolutely.
intuition.
Yes.
How do you how do you take steps to reconnect to it? Um, how do you take steps to reconnect to it? Because I think that your intuition can, um, you know, in the context of dating or otherwise, like it can serve you a lot, but sometimes it's hard to tell whether it's your intuition or it's fear or
Mm-hmm.
adaptation mechanisms.
Mm-hmm. So on my podcast, the Holistic Trauma Healing Podcast, I think I want to say it's episode 40, but I might not be right. But anyway, if you go to Spotify and you go to my podcast and you scroll through the episodes, there is an episode called What's the Difference Between Intuition and Fear? So if someone feels disconnected from their intuition, the fastest way to reconnect to your intuition is to reconnect to your body. So because intuition, whether it comes in as a thought or whether it comes in as a feeling, it is actually coming through your nervous system.
Hmm. Really?
So, oh yeah. Yeah. Here's what I mean by that. Okay. Like your nervous system, the human nervous system is like a radio antenna. Okay. Like, I don't know if you're old enough to remember driving in cars that had dials and you would turn the radio on the
I'm
dial.
old enough to remember if you
Okay. Okay. I don't want to assume how old you are, girl.
thank you. I
Okay.
appreciate it.
Okay. So, right. And there's like the antenna that's stuck up on the car, right? The like metal antenna that's stuck
Yeah.
up. Okay. So, I want, if you were to imagine your nervous system is that metal antenna sticking up out of the old car. Okay. And you're turning the dial to tune into a station and you want to hear the music clear, clean, loud. When you're turning that dial, you get a lot of like, and then
Yeah.
you might like
Yeah.
catch little pieces of a song or little pieces of what somebody's saying, but it's not clear,
Mhm.
right? The signal isn't coming through clear. In the human body, that signal isn't coming in clear because the nervous system is like dysregulated and cluttered and burdened and like, and so the messages that would be coming in from higher self, source, consciousness, whatever phrase or term you like to use for that, when you have a really dysregulated nervous system, that's like the interference in the radio station. You're not getting the message clear coming through. When you clear up your nervous system a bit, then those messages come through a lot more clearly and you can hear them a lot more clearly and you can discern them. And they can even get quieter, but you can hear them more loudly because you've cleared out all the bullshit that keeps you from not being able to hear those messages. Your nervous system is your intuition.
You still offer a lot of, well, I don't want to say a lot, but um, you offer workshops around or webinars around the nervous system.
Mhm.
Um, nervous system hygiene or nervous system 101, is that what it's called?
Nervous System 101 is my nervous system workshop. Yeah. Yeah.
Is that a good place for people to start if they
Oh,
want to
yeah.
know about the nervous system and yeah?
Yeah. Yeah. The nervous system 101 is like, I like basically took polyvagal theory and distilled it down so like a fourth grader could understand it. Because polyvagal theory is pretty complicated and like reading the book is like reading a science textbook and it's like very dry and bland. And but actually the information is so important and so relevant that everyone should know it. So yeah, I took polyvagal theory, I distilled it down in a way that like a fourth or fifth grader could understand. And then I add to that, after I explain the nervous system, I also talk about the importance of practicing awareness. I talk about like the role of the brain and all of that because a lot of times our nervous system is being really affected by a brain that's on fire. Because trauma changes the size and connectivity of certain areas of the brain. So like if we're approaching our trauma journey and it's all about, oh, I'll just regulate my nervous system, like no, you might actually have some real brain inflammation going on that you need to deal with too. And then I talk about another thing called lifestyle inflammation, which is like a term that I made up, but it's essentially any part of your lifestyle, whether it's your finances, your relationships, how you spend your time, the amount of time you spend on a screen, what you're eating, whatever. everything in your lifestyle that's like not supporting the healing that you're trying to create, it's like an inflammatory lifestyle. So I talk about all of those things in Nervous System 101, but I genuinely believe that if more people understood their nervous systems, like this whole world would be a better place, because really like everything bad that's happening is happening because people's nervous systems are just fucking dysregulated and they don't know what to do about it. You know?
I agree with you. And I feel like if you were to say that, well, you already do say that publicly and on a public platform, but I feel like the average listener would think that that's oversimplifying things.
Oh, but it's not when you understand how much the nervous system controls you.
Hmm.
It's not an oversimplification.
I agree. It's not an oversimplification, but it's so simple that
Yeah.
it's an oversimplification.
Yeah. And the process of like healing a nervous system is not simple. Right. So
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah, like the process of like, okay, if the nervous system is if dysregulated nervous systems is like the root of everything that's wrong in this world, like, okay, then how do we fix it? Well, it's like, well, it's not as simple as stating what the problem is. Right.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, our nervous system affects our communication. Like it, everything that we're communicating, the way that we're communicating it is dependent on the state of our nervous system.
Hmm.
It's our nervous system controls our access to intuition. Our nervous system controls how we show up in relationships. Our nervous system controls our sleep cycle. Our nervous system controls our hormone balance. Like it controls all these different things. So it's not an oversimplification to say how much it affects everything. It's kind of like the nervous system of the planet is the mycelial network of the forest. Like all
Say
the
that.
mycel the my the nervous system of the planet is the mycelial network in the forest. Do you know what mycelium is? Okay,
No.
so you know what a mushroom is, right? Okay. The mushroom is the fruiting body of mycelium. So mycelium is like this, it's a network. It's like the fascia in your body or the nervous system. It's like this network of little fibers called mycelium that connect
Okay.
underneath the forest floor. And when it rains, then the mycelium will fruit. And that's what makes a mushroom. But
Okay.
the forest can communicate, like trees and plants can communicate with each other through the mycelial network that's running underneath all of them. It's fucking fascinating. Like if you've never looked into the mycelial network of the
I
forest, like
will.
you should look into it.
Okay.
It's so fascinating. It's the communication network of like this tree over here can communicate to a tree over here through this network of fungus that goes underneath. It's the same way with our body. Everything in our body is communicating with everything else through the network of the nervous system that runs through it. So it's insanely important. If the mycelial network in the forest goes away or gets damaged in some way, like we're fucked. Like the forest is fucked because it is the foundation of a healthy forest, a healthy mycelial network. And if you're in a forest and you just like take some dirt and pull it apart, you'll see all these little white fuzzy things underneath there. And that's the mycelial network. So, like, that controls so much of the ecosystem in the forest. And you only ever see it when a mushroom comes up and you
Hmm.
see the mushroom. But like, you don't even see that with you. Our mushroom, I guess, is like our dysregulated behavior. It's like, oh, there's a problem. There's the mushroom. There's the dysregulated behavior. Yeah, I don't know what that has to do with what we were talking about, but it felt important to talk about the mycelial
That,
network of the
yeah.
forest.
Yes. So would you say that um, the state of the world today is a direct reflection of where we're at as a society in terms of our ability to regulate our nervous systems?
1000%.
Do you think we are doing better today than we were thousands of years ago? I mean, you weren't here thousands of years ago.
Right. Yeah, I'm like, that's difficult. Uh, in a lot of ways, no. I think a lot of us equate technological advances and medical advances with like, oh, we're doing better. but like actually thousands of years ago,
Connected.
hmm?
We're less connected today than we were
We're
back
so
then.
much less connected. We're so much less connected. There's more toxins in the on the planet, in our air and in our water than at any other time in human history. Um, there's like, no, I don't think we're doing better. I think we have technological and medical advances that make us think we're doing better, but actually, people thousands of years ago were probably better off because they were living more tribally. They weren't living in extractive, exploitive, capitalistic conditions. Many of them were part of matriarchal societies, not patriarchal societies. So children and women were at the center of the society, and everybody wasn't doing what men told them to. The men were the protectors. Um, I mean, sure, there were definitely like tribes that were, evil and invaded other places and took their lands. And like, of course, colonialism has been happening for thousands and thousands of years. But in terms of like collective dysregulation, I don't know that it was as bad as it is now
Hmm.
in a lot of ways. People weren't as distracted. Like they didn't have the distractions of phones and screens and,
Yeah.
like we didn't, yeah, the pollution wasn't as bad. The toxicity wasn't as bad. I mean, people had shorter lifespans, that's for sure. But no, I don't think it's all better. Not
Well,
really.
I guess you can only do your part to make things better, and that starts with taking care of your own nervous system. And
That is exactly right. If we want to make any kind of collective change, it has to start here. And if we want to make any kind of changes in our relationships, it has to start here.
yes, yes, agreed. You know, I have to go to work, but
Okay.
I feel like I had um so many more questions to ask you. I don't know where the time went. I can't believe it's 12:30 and that we've been talking for an hour and a half. Um, can we please do this again?
Absolutely. Okay. And when this is ready, share it with me and
Oh, absolutely.
I'll blast it out.
I will.
Okay. Awesome. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.